Speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope with us for approximately 45 minutes. We ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until she has finished. It is my great pleasure this evening to introduce our speaker, Linda R. Give her a hand.
Hi, my name is Linda and I'm an alcoholic. And yes, I take notes because I'm old and senile now. I'm old. So my name is Linda Roberts, and I tell you my last name just like in case I die, you can all come to my funeral, please. Because that's my last great fear, is that no one will come to my funeral. So other than that, I'm really good. So my sobriety dates are June 13th, 1994, and April 17th, 2009. Linda Dunn, I'd like to thank you for asking me to speak and being so kind. And all the guys at the front door, what a welcoming meeting this was. I was very happy about that, so thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to say one of the first prayers I ever said, which is, God, please let whatever comes out of me come from you. So, you know, the doctor's opinion tells us that the phenomenon of craving is limited to a certain set of people known as alcoholics. So what that means to me is there's a certain number of people born with blue eyes, there's a certain number of people born with brown eyes, there's brunettes, there's light complexion, there's dark complexion, and then there's that certain number of people that have the alcohol gene or whatever in them. And that kind of made it easier to come to acceptance being an alcoholic because, you know, can't really change anything else about me. I can't change that either. But the good thing was that because of my alcoholism, I ended up here with you guys. And I got to learn how you live life on life's terms, which was infinitely better than I think I could have lived it not even being an alcoholic, being one of those normie people. I had spent many years digging a really deep hole during my drinking years, and then I was given a ladder that had 12 steps on it, and I got out of that hole. So my story has the cocaine years and the opioid years, but the common thread between all of those years was alcohol. I drank always. I was raised in a good family in the Midwest, but all four of my siblings are in the program. My oldest brother died from the disease when I was 16 and he was 18. And that's really when I started to spiral out of control because I didn't know how to handle that. So I was going to share my experience, strength, and hope in the format of the 12 steps and how they affected me. And this is just a, you know, I could go much deeper and just do step one, but no, we're doing all 12. So step one is we admitted we were alcoholics and that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, so let's look at this with a different definition. Step one is there is a power greater than yourself that wants to kill you. I personally had trouble with the whole idea that my life was unmanageable. I mean, I solved problems when I was drunk. If it's rainy and foggy and you can't see to drive home, you open your car door and you look at the yellow line. I was nursing a hangover at a small airport one time, and, you know, I kind of went, oh, is that my plane? So I ran down the tarmac and chased it And it took off, and it came back and got me. There were some pissed off people on the plane. But anyway, they did come back and get me. So, I mean, you know, I wasn't really unmanageable. When I couldn't hold on to a relationship, I'd divorce him or kick him out. My first husband, when he was drinking and jonesing from heroin, he got mean. And he tried to kill me one night. And he was choking me, and I guess, I don't know, I kicked him, got away, and got outside the house and ran barefoot through the snow in my pajamas down to my neighbor's house. And I banged and banged and banged on the door, and finally they let me in, but they were a little reluctant to do so. They said, "You guys are crazy up there." And I'm like, no. But so that's kind of how my drinking and such went. So I thought, live alone. Yes, alone is best until it isn't. On page 152 in the big book, it says, someday the alcoholic will be unable to imagine life either with or without alcohol. Then he will know loneliness such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. And that's where my drinking took me. I thought a lot about suicide. I used to play sad country and western songs over and over and over at night. I no longer wanted to be around people. My idea to solve that was to build a moat around my house. That really never happened. But I did try to write the perfect suicide note. And what I learned from that is that there's no such thing. That suicide is always the greatest form of self-pity. I've overdosed on heroin. I've taken so much cocaine that I harmed a facial nerve, and I now have a lazy eye. You're going to spend the rest of the meeting wondering which eye it is, aren't you? Okay, step 2. We came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Another way of looking at that step is there is a power greater than yourself that wants to help you live. So how was my life insane? That first husband who tried to kill me, he finally found his calling in life. He really wasn't well suited for work. So he did go to work for the American side of the cartels from Cuba and Colombia. We had kilos and kilos and kilos of cocaine. We lived in $1 million mansion on the Sausalito side of the Bay Area, and we always lived in paranoia. We always had a bag packed. I always thought I was being followed. We were looking out the windows half the time, but hey, really, whose life was insane? Not mine. The solution, as we know, is in the program of AA. And I found the solution by first acting as if. I practiced praying with what I always term conversations with God. Many of you may know that the camel is one of our symbols in AA, and it's because it gets down on its knees every morning and accepts its burden for that day. And then every night it gets down on its knees again and gives that burden up to God. And so I did what AA told me, and I found a God that wasn't based on any religion, but was all-powerful, loving, and always available to me. One of my father's favorite prayers was, "The same everlasting Father who cares for you today will care for you tomorrow and every day. Either he will shield you from suffering, or he will give you unfailing strength to bear it." During my drinking years, I was I learned to believe those words and how to walk through difficult situations. Biggest one was when my son died. He was 18. During my drinking years and my son's puberty years, our relationship was very toxic. During my sobriety years, my son and I got close again. And he used to say, because both of his parents obviously were alcoholics, he'd go, "Mom, somebody pissed in my Jane pool, so I'm going to skip the divorces and sleeping under bridges and financial ruin and jails, and I'm just going to go straight to recovery." Well, smarter than I was. I did see him right before he died of the car accident. He was in a school for job training to become a plumber in Reno. And I woke up one morning and I said, I have to go see my son. So I drove over and we had a really fun, good day together. And I was getting ready to leave. He goes, "Mom, I had a really good time with you." And I said, "Yeah, I had a good time with you too." "No, Mom, I had a really good time with you." They say to talk about your deceased relatives till you can do it without crying. I don't think that'll ever happen. And he told me he loved me. So that was a good note to end that on. I had a God of my understanding, and I have the members of AA to be my earth angels, and then they help me walk through life. My initial 15 years of sobriety were pretty easy. Then I moved to Arkansas. Not that that was bad. I moved there to take care of my mom and dad, and right before that, my then husband was putting me in bankruptcy, and he'd made overtures toward my minor daughter, and all we had were lawyers and court dates, and my life was a mess, and it was full of attorneys, and I had a lot of fear, and I had very little faith. And I moved to Arkansas, and I don't really know anybody, and I went to meetings occasionally, and I had a convincer. We call it a relapse, but in England they call it a convincer. My relapse was short, miserable, and very convincing. Which leads me to step 3. Okay. Step 1, there's a power greater than you that wants to kill you. Step 2, there's a power greater than me that wants to help me live. Step 3, choose. Otherwise known as making a decision to turning your will and your life over to the care of God as I understood him. So during my convincer, I had a random piss test, and I got my license to practice medicine suspended. I spent a good year and a half with a heart rate over 120, and in such anxiety I didn't know what to do. I was just crazy. And finally, I turned my will and my life over to the care of my higher power. I walked through every fear that I had of not being able to make the income I was used to making. And it was a dark and rainy night. I didn't have to open the door. And I told God that I chose sobriety over the material. Then my life got better. My sponsor and the doctors that I worked with, my sponsor and I worked a lot. I became a part of the meetings. I didn't just sit on the fringes. The doctors I worked with and my sponsor came and talked to the medical board. I got my license restored, and not one of my fears ever occurred. I didn't have to move in with my mom and dad. I didn't have to take my daughter out of college. I didn't have to go to work at Walmart. Although sometimes I think that sounds still good. My sponsor told me to go to the Thursday night meetings in Arkansas, and I told her no. I said, because my neighbor goes to the Thursday night meeting, and he's an asshole. My sponsor said, go at least once a month. So I did. And the first time I went, my neighbor was chairing the meeting, and although I had heard the words he said before, I had a profound understanding of them that night and a feeling that maybe I had contempt before investigation. So I married him. Um, uh, but not before we spent a year to getting to know each other and talking with other couples that were both in AA to see how they did it. And he's the best husband I ever had, and I love him. All right, step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I did the best I could with my sponsor, but she had to help me find my part. She had to help me learn what character defects were. So don't worry if you're new. Just do it to the best of your ability, and heck, you can always do it again. But it helped me start to let go. Eventually, I learned from the 12 and 12 on page 76 that the chief activator of my defects was my self-centered fear. It was the activator. So I learned to look at my underlying fear, and then I could find my defect. In step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. The principle that is associated with that step, now y'all know the principles, those ones we practice in our daily lives. Yeah, those. So the principle with that step is integrity. Now, I know that if I didn't do this step with my sponsor, I would, A, not have gotten a better insight into myself, whether it be good or bad, but B, I would have cheated. You know, there's no way if I didn't do it to another human being that I could have been thoroughly honest. In step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. I was told that that was a period to reflect and rest. The key there is willingness. The best analogy of this step that I ever heard was from an artist friend of mine who's in the program, and she said, before I start painting, I look at the blank canvas, and I think about what I want the painting to say, and I look for the right ways to proceed, and I think of the mistakes I've made in the past and what the opposite of that would be. And I become willing to let my higher power help me grow. And I love step 6 and 7, my husband can tell you, because that's when I got to start filling up that hole in my soul. And I got to fill it up with what's good from, I call my higher power God, it's short. In step 7, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And humbly doesn't mean humiliation. One definition of humbly is to be deferentially respectful. In other words, I defer with respect to my God as being a power greater than myself. And now I have another 11 years in the program. When I saw one of my favorite character defects rear its ugly head within the last year, I like to tell people when they're wrong and where I'm right, and, you know, convince them, and maybe pick out a character defect of theirs or something. And, so I saw it rear its ugly head, and I said, I don't want to be that person. And I knew what to do. I got on my knees with respect and deferring to God and asked that he help me. And the answer came. He said, get an Al-Anon book and seek the answers there. And it worked, but I have to keep working it. I will always have some character defects because I'm a human being. But because of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and my ongoing participation in it, I can become aware of them sooner, and I can change my behavior accordingly. Here is a prayer. The author is unknown, but this prayer sat on Dr. Bob's desk for years, and it is entitled Humility. Humility is perpetual quietness of heart. It is to have no trouble. It is never to be fretted or vexed or irritable, to wonder at nothing that is done to me, to feel nothing that is done against me. It is to be at rest when nobody praises me and when I am blamed or despised. It is to have a blessed home in myself where I can go in and shut the door and kneel to my Father in secret and be at peace, as in a deep sea of calmness, when all around and about is seeming trouble. In step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. There's that word again, willing. This one took a lot of prayer and meditation for me because I didn't want to confront anyone with my side of the street. I read ahead, and knew that that was coming in step 9. And so I was afraid to do step 8. I was told to go back and review all the other steps before I did step 8. Yes, I was an alcoholic and I did not want to live that way anymore. Yes, I believed that if alcohol wanted to kill me, then there was a power in the universe that wanted to save me. I reminded myself that God's will was more important than mine. I looked at my fear and I walked through it. I looked at the opposite of fear and I found my courage. I rested and seeing my painting and looked at my painting before I started. So then I made my list. In step 9, the principle is justice, making direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This is when I learned how to rely on my truth and not have expectations. And dang it, my amends went pretty well, really. My first amends was just after I got out of rehab. I was forced into it by the office manager. Anyway, the office manager, she arranged these tables in a U shape and then put my chair right in the middle. And I'm all alone out there. And I just remember saying, "Hi, my name is Linda, and I'm an alcoholic. And I think I apologize for my bad behavior." And I don't even really remember, but after I did that, at least 2 people came up to me and told me they had family members that they thought were alcoholics, and could I help? In step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That principle is perseverance, and perseverance is so important in AA. You get about 2 years, you've been going to the same meetings, you've heard Jane say the same thing over and over and over again. Go to another meeting, or go to, I was going to say a speaker meeting, but like a circuit meeting where you can really be uplifted, Just do something a little different so that you don't get bored in AA and you can persevere. Friend of my husband's, he used to say, "I do a 10th step every night because I don't ever want to do a 4th step again." And that's one of the things I grew to love about AA, is because I get to keep on growing and keep on learning. And, it doesn't ever have to end. And I love that growth. So, the saying, it's at first you go to meetings because you have to, and then you go to meetings because you want to. That's perseverance. And in my 10th step, I try to see where I've done something right that I would never have done before. I remember the first time I shut up. I was shortly after rehab, and, there was some thing going on at the office, and I was just ready to tell them where they were wrong and I was right, and I just shut up. And it was this out-of-body experience where I'm like, who is that person just standing there not saying anything? And to this day, I don't know what the issue was. It wasn't very important. It went away. It wasn't a big deal. So I think it's good to see where we've learned something new and done it right. I got to slow down. We're at 11. Step 11, when we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. I had pneumonia really bad and was hospitalized and had gotten home, and I was still pretty sick, and my sponsor called me and she said, "Have you prayed to God to make you well?" And I said, "No, I'm only supposed to pray for his will and the power to carry that out." And she said, "Oh my God, if you don't have a God that will help you get well, get a bigger God." And so, yeah, it's okay to pray for yourself sometimes. Also, when my brother was new in the program, and he called me, his son had just tried to commit suicide. He was in the hospital. My brother had to go to New Orleans by himself on a business trip. I kind of had a moment of panic. We hung up, and I went into where God lives, my side of the bed. That's where God lives. And I sat there and I said, "God, what can I do to help him? What can I do?" And that's when I remembered that, or the thought came to me, you can go to New Orleans. You can go to New Orleans and hang out while he's in his business meetings and be there. And just a few weeks ago, he picked up his third-year chip. And his son is doing good, and he's in college, and so yay. So having had a spiritual awakening, I used to tell my sponsor, I could tell her, "I've been to Mecca." That's not a spiritual awakening. "I've climbed that's not a spiritual awakening. "I decided AA was more important than my job." That's a spiritual awakening. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So my spirit awoke, my soul filled up with a substitute, and it's the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there I found release from care and boredom and worry, and my imagination was fired, and life means something at last. I've never met anyone in AA who has thoroughly followed our path and then things got worse. I love this design for living. My life is good, very good. I live in a resort. My husband can cook. So I invite all of you to join us on this road of happy destiny. Thank you.
You need that. There you go. Okay, let's thank our speaker once again. Thank you, Linda. Wonderful, wonderful.